Hello, everyone. This is the 10th niche conversation this year. I'm Jessica DeWitt. I'm one of the editors at the Network in Canadian History and Environment. And today I am coming from Treaty 6 territory, which is the homeland of the Métis, as well as the traditional territory of the Cree and Dakota, also known as Saskatoon. And today I am joined by John Zoe. Would you like to tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, my name is John B. Zoe. I used to be the former chief negotiator for the Clinton Land Claim. Currently senior advisor to the Clinton government, which is on its way is established. And but I also dabble in a bit of contemporary history as well as traditional history and making comparisons between the two, and coming up with some interesting pieces about that relationship.
Awesome. Yeah, so today I invited you because you wrote a piece, you collaborated with Jess Duncan on a piece for our HBC 350 series. So this year is the 350th anniversary of the founding of the Hudson's Bay Company. So the series is just meant to explore some of the environmental history elements and other historical elements of the HBC. And your article, Nèk'e, Nàdè, the HBC in Clinton, Nèk'e, was very popular, really well. The public really seemed to enjoy it. It's one of our most popular posts from this past fall. Okay. So we're just going to chat about it a bit. Starting off by talking about the land before Fort Ray. So the Hudson's Bay Company founded Fort Ray on a point in the north arm of Great Slave Lake in 1852. So it was the first permanent trading post in the area, as you note in your article. So I was wondering if you would like to talk about maybe what the land was like before HBC arrived, and perhaps what trading was like in the area before the HBC arrived.
Well, a lot of the before the HBC arrived, they've been around before for quite some time, but just not in the area. Because our area was not considered to be a fur, like a fur trade area. And so the original HBC post that was set up in 1852 was a provisional post, which means that this is where they would trade for caribou meat and wild meats, so that when they transport a lot of these goods to the north, a lot of this transportation is really about muscle power. It takes people carrying their canoes and dragging boats up and down the rivers. So it takes a lot of energy, and they need some real light material to eat. And so a lot of this provisional post was to get the dry meat, dry fish, and things like that, so that it can be used for transportation. So, so that the people don't eat their inventory before it gets to the customers. And so eventually it became a regular trading post, but it still continued to be a provisional post.
That's interesting. Huh. Yeah, I like the focus on transportation and mobility. Yeah. I always enjoy histories that focus on that. So as the first permanent institution on the point, settler institution, I'd say, the HBC kind of brought in other colonial institutions like the Catholic mission. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about how these institutions in the HBC changed the area, and how Clinton both resisted and adapted to these changes.
Well, the thing was that the world was changing at the time. Like the North was becoming, the introduction of Western institutions, and the trading has been in the area for a long, long time. but just took time to establish. And once it became established, then it had a real effect on the people themselves, upon the leadership, because the Hudson's Bay, they needed to focus on a few people, especially the ones that had an influence over their people, the leadership, because they can inspire the people to go harvest more than they need, because they still need to harvest furs, they still need to trap furs, they still need to go hunting and fishing. And so that was just a natural thing. All the Hudson's Bay has done was that it made it a commercial activity. And by making it a commercial activity, then it started to recognize these leadership that can, feed into the system, and they're given credit, and then they have to pay off that credit with the furs that they bring in. So it became more of taking more and more from the land. But eventually, the fur markets became commercialized. Even the food products became commercialized, and even the land was transferred to governments, and all the subsurface resources were given to the entities of government. So it started a chain of events that kind of gutted us out with all our resources and renamed our leadership to the point where you really have nothing left in terms of the Western development. And so that's how the land claim and self-government pieces come in to come in back into the picture, so that we can reclaim a lot of these things that were taken away through negotiations, so that we can establish what was there, so that we can, stand on our own 2 feet as we were before. And we've just been brought to our knees into this new system. So it's a resurgence. It's a way of reclaiming. And so the article, the NiCHE article, is about, reclaiming identity, reclaiming what was there before, and through the system of commercialization and introduction of these forces that had the full support of the governance at the time, can come in and do these things, while we go back to the same government and try to work out an agreement so that a lot of these things can be shared rather than just a one-way street.
No, I think that's a strong theme throughout all of these HBC posts, is this commercialization and commodification, and how that's so connected to placing this strong arm of Canadian identity onto Indigenous peoples and other people living in what is now known as Canada, right? How strongly the supposed Canadian identity is connected to commercialization. It's kind of, it's interesting and disillusioning. But I love reading about and learning about this reclamation process, and that's really neat.
In the meantime, it's not to say, those are big picture items that we're talking about, but at the local level, the HBC was the precursor of governments, where they actually trained people in and about the trade. And they're also, a lot of our workforce in the last, coming from the late 60s and early 70s, the big workforces were people that were employed by the trade, because they can count money, they can keep accounts, they can do inventory, they know about the structure of payroll and all these things that those skills are transportable to new ways of living in the Western world. So
Yeah.
there's there's negativity, but there's also some positive things that that we can build on.
Yeah.
Land claim and self-government agreements that we come up with is to talk about that inventory of what we can retain, what we can share, and what has been acquired will accept, so that we know what the lines are. You know, rather than having just a gutting scenario.
Interesting. Yeah, so you've touched on it a little bit just now, but the last question I had for you kind of had to do with work and labor. The last part of your article kind of focuses on the 20th century and how the HBC just became an employer in the region. And I wondered if you spoke in the article a bit about your personal experience and community knowledge as well. Maybe just talk a little bit about how the HBC employed folks in the region and how that affected the community.
Well, before the presence of governments, like the territorial government has only been in our communities since 1971. And before that, the federal government came and visited us once a year for 1 day, you know. So we're really left on our own. And so a lot of these developments that existed before the governments came in, we still maintain that structure of governance. And we, in our agreement, we talk about that structure. That's something that we've become accustomed to, but the power still rests with the people themselves. So there's a lot of accommodation between, the government and commercial institutions. That relationships are always developing, and there's room for a lot of things that should continue. It's one of the longest standing institutions in this area anyways, as well as in other places in the north, that the HBC is the longest institution that has been in every community. So that if you look at the names of the communities in the north, some of them start off with a fort, like Fort Ray, Fort Providence, Fort Resolution. Fort that it just really means that it was established by the trade, And when you have other names like Gameti or Ray Lakes or Wati or Lacrimart or Wakwiti or Snare Lake, a place like that that ends with a T or ends with a lake, is communities that are established by the indigenous communities themselves. So one denotes the indigenous community versus a community that's established by the trade.
Cool. Huh. Wow. Well, I've learned quite a bit, and I love how this conversation has kind of looked at both the big, and then you're filling in all the community and on the ground stuff, when you're someone like myself who, I'm far away. I've never been to the Canadian North. I'm not even Canadian, I'm American. I'm an American immigrant. I read a lot of big picture stuff about the area, and I rarely hear about or learn about these details, and they're so valuable and so necessary. And I think that your contribution to this series and the impact that it's made on our readers as a testament to that. So I want to thank you for taking the time to write it. I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. And thank you so much, John.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Glad to participate.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon, or again. Bye.
Bye.